is where I will spend my night because Judge Rick Mancini will be here later. It's the Larry Bruno Foundation, and the host, of course, is Steve Higgins. And the other night, they brought Coach Mooney and the Beaver Falls Fighting Tigers here to celebrate some Zookie's wings and also take a stroll down memory lane. And when you're having a tough time, as they are, as teams go through, more times than not, people only remember the good years, but you got to have some bad years to get to the good years. Having this history in front of them definitely has to help moving forward.
That's what we wanted to tell the kids. I mean, there has been, as winning as a program as Beaver Falls has been since the very beginning. In 1903, by the way, is when we started playing. And actually, New Brighton started in 1900, so they have a little experience on us. But as many great teams and big highlights as we had, there's been seasons like this before in the past. And we wanted the kids to know that. You know, kids are different today, Rob. Sometimes you need to tell them. You need to talk to them. You need to sit down and say, first of all, we care. We care about you. We care about you, your family. We care about what happens on Friday nights up at that Reef Stadium, whether you realize it or not. Every guy that's ever wore the orange and black carries that with them every Friday night during football season, like I'm sure you do with the Brighton Lions.
Absolutely.
But that's the message we wanted to convey to the kids. We wanted to invite them over for chicken wing dinner, a little diversion, a little fun. Let them know someone cares. Rob, when we started this foundation, we were very basic. I mean, we're not curing cancer here. We wanted to keep Coach Bruno's name alive in the community, and we wanted to help these be a support group for these local sport teams. And that's what we do. And we're just so happy that we can be part of this. And the coach brought the kids down. They were only here for about an hour and a half. We had Broadhauser and Mike Romai from KDKA. Broadhauser's a former AD, great player at Beaver Falls. They addressed the kids, short but sweet, gave them a little inspirational talk. And I think they left here, you know me with my history stuff. I gave them a little bit of history. I told them how Beaver Falls is a top 10 in wins and how, we're one of, anytime they take the field, they should never feel slighted by anybody because we're an elite program of the WPIL. And just like Jim Render said when he was here last time, how much respect he had for Beaver Falls football program. So anything we can do to help these kids, we want to do. They're playing Freedom Friday night, so we're hoping they could get out there and have some improvement Friday and hopefully come out with a win and maybe help turn their season around.
The legend that is Mike Romai, he recently retired from the local station here, of course, WBVP, WMBN. I want to wish him nothing but a happy retirement. Does a lot of good stuff with the Beaver County Humane Society, one of the most talented individuals I've ever worked with, and I'm honored to call him friend. So, Mike, enjoy your much-deserved retirement and know you made the airwaves a very special place, not just here, but at that icon that I'm still proud to work at, KDK Radio. Now, so Gino DeMarco, I'm talking to the other day, Larry Bruno's name always comes up. It came up with Frank Dawson. Of course, Larry Bruno grew up in East Liverpool. He and Frank, good friends. We were talking earlier today. Gino believes that Larry Bruno was honest when he said 1978, Dwight Collins, Jerry Moy, the greatest football team he ever coached. These were two freshmen that cracked the varsity lineup when Beaver Falls was graduating 500 kids, and this whole area was, no one ever cracked the varsity lineup as a freshman. You didn't even dress. You were on the junior high team. How good, you were here, how good were those two guys, Jerry Moy and Dwight Collins?
Well, I'd say they were one game away. I mean, Coach Bruno coached them.
Right.
He knew the talent, just like Coach Chan with all those great teams. He knew the talent that he had. Okay. But Coach knew the talent on that team. Now, we have 7 championship teams that will argue with you on that, or with
Right.
Coach on that.
Right.
But Beaver Falls is just such a unique town, Rob, that we've actually had a couple teams that were not championship teams that are considered
Great.
maybe better teams than the championship teams. And that's one of them. Okay. It all kind of came together for Coach. You know, in 60, they had the big team in 60. I was lucky enough to play on a team in 72 that was number 1 in the state. And I have articles in my scrapbook where Coach Bruno was saying that we were the best team he ever coached at that point, even better than the 60 team. Better, not talent-wise, better playing together as a team, which was right up his alley, right? So if you play together as a team, with Coach Bruno, you're up there, right? So that was a great team in 72. Now, all these guys, the little brothers of the 72 team, the Nardones, the Collinses, all these guys that were watching these 72 teams and these 73 and 74 teams, these kids, I think you had 5 NFL players with NFL experience. You had Glenn Dennison, you had Mike Langston, you had Dwight Collins, you had who was the other one? Mike Nardone was the quarterback, and Jerry Moy, obviously.
What a player!
But the whole team was like a college team. Okay, they were undefeated the whole season, and I believe. Now, I watched the running backs in the 60s play, okay? And I don't think there was a better tandem, which I mean 2 running backs on the same team.
Not going to get an argument from me.
Collins and Moy, because I could go back to Russo and Tracy and Bo Hayden and Butch Ryan.
Yeah, man.
Okay, now we're getting in serious waters here.
Butch Ryan was some kind of player.
Okay, if Bo would have came back his senior year, they might be the elite group. But I think Moy and Collins, in the history of Beaver Falls, in our 121-year history, is probably the best tandem running backs that we ever had. And Coach Bruno is so lucky, to have them. And what happened was when Coach Bruno retired after the 78 season, the 78-79 season.
So that was the end for him.
That was the end for him.
Oh, wow. I didn't know.
Collins still had another year of eligibility, and his senior year wasn't as great as his junior year.
Who took over for Bruno?
Tony Dvorak.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and Tony was a great coach. We love Tony. But Dwight told me flat out, he said, Higgs, that affected me my senior year, not having Coach Bruno there. It really did. If you remember, Collins got hurt his senior year. He missed 3 games. He still rushed for 900 yards, but he was All-American the previous year, parade All-American. So he came back with 3 games missing, still rushed for 900 yards, scored like 10 touchdowns, had stats that anybody would be proud to have, but for an All-American type, it was not as good as his junior year.
Right.
And he told me flat out, he said, Higgs, when Coach left, it really affected me, So, that was tough on him.
Do you remember hearing when you were like a junior and senior about Dwight and Jerry? Did you remember? Because they were just a few years younger. Really.
Rob.
Right.
I walked out, when I left Bama, I transferred to Pitt.
Right.
So I'm up at Pitt Stadium, spring practice. We had Jimmy Johnson was on the staff.
Yeah, assistant.
That was the greatest staff ever, by the way, that year, the Pitt with Jackie Sherrill and them guys.
Wow.
I could name that's unbelievable, the staff.
Who else was on that staff?
Foge Fazio, Joe Moore, Pendry, right down the line, and Jimmy Johnson, Pat Jones.
I just had Joe Moore on the air.
Juan Stat was a graduate assistant. Jeez. The quarterback on the 76 team, Cavanaugh, was there. I would warm up with him every day at practice.
Oh, man.
But he was a nice guy. But anyway, I come out of the locker room at Pitt Stadium. This is in 77. And Jimmy Johnson was a defensive coach, so he really had no business talking to me. I was an offensive player.
Right.
So I'm coming out, and he yells my name, Higgins, come here. And I'm like, oh, no, Jimmy Johnson knows my name. So I went over, and I'm thinking, oh, he's going to say, hey, keep up the good work.
Right.
We're doing pretty good, right?
I know exactly where this is going.
At the time, Collins was a sophomore in high school.
He asked about him.
I went over and said, yeah, Coach, what's up? He says, you're from Beaver Falls, ain't you? I said, yes, sir. He said, can you help us recruit that Collins kid?
No kidding.
I said, yeah, Coach, I could probably help you. I know him pretty well.
Think about that.
Yeah, they know about him when he was a freshman. He was like LeVar Arrington type. Like they knew, like LeVar, remember when he was a freshman?
Yeah, man.
Everyone said he was going right to the NFL. Well, that's the same with Dwight.
Listen, Pat DeMeo, who's the head of the Allegheny Health Network Orthopedic Institute, team physician, Pirates, lifelong friend, tells the story, and I'm going to tell it again because I've told it so many times. He's with Coach McCurry, North Hills. He's like the physician staff on the sidelines. His wife hadn't moved to Pittsburgh yet. LeVar takes a kickoff all the way, right? He picks up the phone and he calls his wife and he says, Anita, I think I've just seen the greatest high school football player in my life. And he grew up in Staten Island, New York, played. There have been some great players. But when this town was humming with the manufacturing, the steel industry, Armstrong, ceiling tile, that world headquarters. There were hundreds of kids going through this school district, hundreds graduating every single year. How many players did you actually have on your team when you were playing for Larry Bruno in the early and mid 70s?
Oh, we were cutting people to camp. Like, we had camp before the season, and not everyone went to camp. I can tell you that right now. And when we got back to camp, some of the guys that weren't able to go to camp were allowed to come to practice, but they were some of them were dismissed. We had over 50 on our squad, probably 50-ish.
You ever think about, speaking of staff, you ever think of the coaches that Larry Bruno sent off to become head coaches? Blythe, Bruno, Mancini,
I can tell you the staff we
Fleury.
had in the 70s had to be the best in the state.
Who was it?
It was Coach Bruno, and it was Coach Haar, Gene Haar. Now, Gene Haar is a guy that was the head coach of Freedom in the 50s. He coached Freedom in 1950 to an undefeated season,
right.
And it was their first undefeated season since the 20s. He would take Coach Bruno to task. When Coach first came to Monaca, Coach Haar was kicking their butt. Freedom, the first couple years. Right?
Really?
So, of course, Coach gained much respect for Coach Haar. So when he came to Beaver Falls and Coach Haar was available, no brainer. I think that was a top 1-2 punch ever around here. I mean, that's two major head coaches on one staff. But anyway, Larry Matrazo was our offensive coordinator. And
he was coordinator then.
Yeah. And then we had I was a receiver. Butch Ryan was our receivers coach. Then we had Coach Carbone, Coach Blythe, and Coach Fleury were the line coaches. Now, come on.
Come on.
Okay, Coach Fleury, Coach Blythe's 2 Whipple Yield championships there.
Yeah, man.
Coach Carbone, he played football at Geneva with Coach Bruno. We love Coach Carbone. He was our track coach. He was like a heart and soul type guy.
All right, so tell me this.
And then Dvorak, and then Dave Murray was on the staff.
Do you think if Larry Bruno retires a little earlier, Matrazo, we've talked about this, do you think he's the head coach? Come on.
Yeah, because
he should have never left Beaver Falls.
Well, this is just my opinion.
That's okay.
Coach was grooming Coach Matrazo.
Bruno was
grooming Coach Matrazo. Coach waited. In 77, the New Brighton job came open. Matrazo didn't even put in for it. Okay, some other guys put in for it. They wanted Larry, over there. They wanted Matrazo. So somehow he got a call from the administrator. He ended up getting the job, okay?
Right.
Coach Bruno never rubbed it in on anybody. We never ran the score up.
Never.
On teams. I mean, we beat teams pretty good some nights, but he never purposely ran the score up until he played New Brighton when Coach Matrazo faced him.
Ran it up.
He ran it up. Okay. And Coach Matrazo couldn't believe it. I mean, it was the fourth quarter. Coach Bruno's passing. I mean, that's not him.
No.
Okay. He was obviously sending a message. And when that
What was the message?
You shouldn't have left.
You should have stayed here.
You should have stayed because he wanted Matrazo to be his successor.
But you realize what Larry Matrazo did at New Brighton. They were down too. He got them on the right track too.
Great coach.
Oh yeah,
we
man.
Love Coach Matrazo.
And I said, look, I was in Elwood earlier today with Coach Bradley and what he's done there, turning around. I don't know how Traz didn't end up somewhere. Elwood, somewhere, Ambridge. I mean,
right.
Maybe it was his choosing. And, I know him really well. He was the first coach I ever interviewed on the radio, my kid's grandfather. But I still can't for the life of me understand why this guy never coached again.
I don't think he pushed things. Like he pushed jobs.
Yeah.
He was just like even the New Brighton job. He didn't even put in for it. And then they called him and they're like, well, I didn't. He said, I didn't put. He told me personally.
Why is it? I'll talk to Mike Roma or anybody who went to school here. Everybody loved Coach Matrazo.
Yeah.
As a teacher, they loved this guy.
Scanlon, was our quarterback.
Kevin.
Well, Kevin and I, we wished he would have thrown a little bit more because he had just taken the offensive coordinator job, I think, when we were sophomores.
And he didn't like that.
And according to Kevin, Kevin's a lot smarter than me. And he would notice things that I just wouldn't even notice, And he says, he called me one day. This was 30 years after we were out of high school. He says, hey, I'm reading my scrapbook about the Hopewell game, our senior year. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
He says, we almost lost. They almost upset us. It was 21-16. They were driving in at the end of the game. I said, yeah, I remember. He said, you know how many times we threw that game? 5. Now, Kevin and I were recognized as
Pretty good 1-2 tandem.
one of the best 1-2 tandems in the whole Whippeal. Okay,
No kidding.
like Gordon Jones was the top receiver in the Whippeal, and you can make an argument I might have been second or third. I was right
But
there.
listen to me, Stevie.
Kevin was like the top quarterback.
Where did he go to college?
Well, he went to NC State, transferred to Arkansas.
Now, do you realize, and I'm going to say it again, you went to Alabama from Beaver Falls. So as Joe Namath did, do you understand what we're talking? And Alabama and Georgia this weekend, Nick Saban's even going to be there with College Game Day. I mean, this is massive. I mean, what was that whole thing like?
It's Coach Bruno. Coach Bruno.
I mean, Paul Barrett Bryant knew him by first name basis.
He called him right there in front of me. I almost...
Wait a minute. Wait. So what happened now?
Well, I'll just give you a brief story because this isn't all about me.
No, I know, but it's my show, so it's about you for now.
I only had a couple offers. See, on the big schools, Rob, I wasn't never the first choice. I was maybe
Why?
second.
Size, speed?
Yeah, I was like there was 4-star players. I might have been a 3-star guy, right? High 3-star. So now they're going to Penn State, Pitt, Bama. They're going to have 2 or 3 guys ahead of me, and they have to get turned down before they get to me. Well, I had an offer from Michigan State. They were losing then. They weren't too good. Coach Bruno didn't want me to go there because he felt they were going to be on probation. They had some violations coming. Mm-hmm. And he says, you know what, we can do better. So that's when the Clemson offer came. Okay. Clemson, I went down, Scanlon, I, and Mancini. They offered me a scholarship. I accepted. A week later, they reneged. They took it back off me because, remember Dwight Clark?
Yeah. San Francisco 49ers.
Right. He had signed, same age as me.
Who sadly is no longer with us.
He had signed to go to Georgia.
Okay.
Do
you realize the names you're talking about?
When they lost him, like I explained to you, I was down the list. I was behind Clark on Clemson's list. Okay.
Right.
So when Clark turned him down, and maybe one other guy turned him down, they got to me. They offered me. I accepted. A week later, Clark says, you know what? I want to go to Clemson now. So they pulled my scholarship. Well, Coach Bruno went through the roof. That's what he does for his players.
Wow.
See, these guys today, they don't realize how lucky we were to have him.
He went to the wall for you.
So he called me in his office at Beaver Falls.
He loved you, Steve.
And he says, he was mad. He says, where do you want to go? He says, I got friends at Miami in Florida, Texas Tech. Where do you want to go? And I says, Coach, I'll go to Shippensburg with Robbie. I don't care.
Who's Robbie?
Rob Mancini went to Shippensburg.
Okay.
He says, I'm calling Bear Bryant right now.
On the phone right there.
I'm like, go ahead. And I'm thinking, he's not going to get through. He calls down there. This is Larry Bruno calling from Beaver Falls. Is Coach Bryant available? And I'm waiting for him to say he'll call you back. Next thing I hear is, hey, Coach, how you doing?
No.
Bear Bryant, as soon as you hear Larry Bruno.
Well, Namath going there didn't hurt.
He's right on. Anyway, got a kid here that's available. First question out of Bear's mouth is, does he qualify? Because my grades weren't great. He says, yes, he does.
Right.
Send me some films. He sent the films down. They looked at them. A week later, I had a scholarship offer at Bama. So that's how I ended up at Bama.
But Beaver Falls was thriving back then. 7th Avenue, they were wall-to-wall people. I mean, it was incredible. But what was it like that first week at Alabama? It had to be. I mean,
it was 103 degrees. The coaches were screaming at us in practice. We're still in shorts first week. And I watched some kids cry. You know, it was really rough, really, really rough. 2 guys on the staff were Junction Boys. Remember that movie, Junction Boys?
Yes, I do.
They played for A&M, Coach Campbell,
right,
and another one.
Right.
They were Junction Boys. So that's the kind of practices we had.
Were you homesick?
Yeah, a little bit. 900 miles away, didn't know anybody. But, you know, Rob, back then we were street smart, man. Our era. You know, we could handle it.
Right.
And I wish I would have let more people help me. That's what I tell my kids. Well, because you think you can do it all yourself. You know, you think you're, you know.
I'm Stevie Higgins.
And that's the advice I give my kids and I give other kids when I say, hey, if somebody wants to help you, you let them help you. Take advantage of their help. They wouldn't want to help. If they don't want to help you, they wouldn't offer it. I tell my daughters that because I didn't take advantage. I had people, like Frank Namath came to my house the day before I went to Bama.
Great Frank
And he
Namath.
gave me names of people he knew down there. And all
Joe's
these
brother,
people,
obviously.
and I never called anybody. That because I felt like, I didn't need any help. So it ended up hurting me because after my second year, the NCAA passed a 95 scholarship rule.
Right.
We had 115 scholarship players.
So they had.
So I lost my scholarship. When you're a split end on a wishbone offense, when you're fourth on the depth chart,
expendable.
and you got Ozzie Newsome in front of you, you're not going to believe me.
Ozzie
like if you're
Newsome?
Fourth on the depth chart at Pitt, they got a split end and a flanker. You're going to be backing somebody up. You're dressing out. If you're fourth at Bama with the wishbone, you don't even travel.
Remember Reggie, the other kid who played at Pitt from Beaver Falls?
Reggie Williams.
What a player.
I think
God,
in the history of Beaver Falls,
man, he was a player.
Van Goemont is probably our greatest wide receiver ever.
Who?
Van Goemont. Right here. Van.
Arizona State.
No.
What?
He went to Miami.
Okay, I'm looking at New Jersey.
Yeah, he was a side judge in the NFL.
Tell me about him.
He's a great player. Big 33. He's the only receiver.
What year did he graduate?
66. He's the only receiver to ever be MVP of the MAC conference.
Okay.
He was, Joe Tronzo called him the greatest sophomore in Beaver Falls history.
And coming from Joe Tronzo,
His sophomore year, he had like 5 touchdown catches, 3 interceptions, ran 2 back for touchdowns. He has the record for touchdown receptions at Beaver Falls with 21. Okay. Reggie Williams is second best. Reggie Williams is the fastest receiver to ever play at Beaver Falls. He broke Dwight Collins's record in track. Okay. He had 38 catches his senior year, which is a lot at Beaver Falls because the way they spread the ball out.
Right.
I mean, too many people caught over 30. He caught like high 30s. And what he did was he made first team All-State, all Big 33, got a full ride to Pitt, started at Pitt, okay?
I remember.
And had a tryout with the Saints, okay? Plus, you know what the cherry on the top is, where I say he's the second best? They won a championship his senior year in high school. So he's the fastest receiver ever. They won a championship. So
where did he grow up in Beaver Falls, you know?
I think down lower end.
Really? I always wanted to meet him. He was, and I was so, think about it, Dwight Collins, Reggie, boom, boom.
Well, we tried to induct him twice, and it just so happens that...
Well, that's got to get done.
Yeah, his family reunion every year was falling on the same day as our banquet, 2 years in a row.
Got to get
So
him.
then after that, we kind of got away from him a little bit.
How good was Kevin Scanlon?
Because
New Brighton wasn't playing Beaver Falls.
We rate Kevin at the foundation second best ever at Beaver Falls.
Quarterback or
quarterback, right? No, it's confusing.
Behind Namath, obviously.
Behind Namath. Because what happened was Kevin started 2 years at Quigley before he even got here.
I didn't know that.
Okay. So his sophomore year at Quigley, he broke Joe Namath's single season passing record, Beaver County.
Get out.
Right. So it's confusing. So now he comes to Beaver Falls. He already has that record in his pocket. He had 2 seasons at BF. He threw for like 1,200, 1,300, but he never exceeded Namath's record. So people think when they hear Scanlon broke Namath's record, they think he had the Beaver Falls record. You follow me?
I'm following you.
But he didn't. He just had the Beaver County. So Joe held the Beaver Falls record all the way until 91 with a kid named Andreas. I think Seth?
Yes.
He threw for 1,800 yards, and he broke Joe's record. And then in 95, Carlos Kleckley broke Andreas's record.
Yeah.
And then in 2005, Dominic Henderson broke Kleckley's record. Then,
I love it, man.
Last year, Jaron Brickner, 4-year starter, he rewrote all the record books at Beaver Falls.
So, Stevie, let me ask you, and we're at the Larry Bruno Foundation. Judge Mancini will be here in a little bit. We're going to wrap this up with him. I'm going to let him once again remind everybody what the foundation is about, how you can help out. And we love you, Joe. Hope you're doing well. But what do you think it was that made you realize that history was important? Because you were that kind of cocky wide receiver at Alabama, thinking, you know what, I can do this on my own. But now here you come back, and there's nobody more plugged in or doing more to let this history live on than you. And you're a walking Google. I can't believe the stuff you know. When did the light switch go on to where, man, I got to embrace this stuff because it's a part of the fabric, the foundation of who I am?
Always been interested. It stems from my family. My parents both were born in Beaver Falls. They both have a love for Beaver Falls. They passed that on to me. But when I started, I can tell you right away when I started getting into this historical stuff. Remember when the Civil War came out?
Yeah,
Ken Burns?
Yeah.
That changed my whole life.
That documentary on PBS.
Yes, sir. I watched that thing. It was like 12 hours. I locked myself in a room and I watched that whole 12 hours and I'm like, oh my goodness.
You know what?
And it started going into sports and war and all this history stuff, local history in Beaver Falls. I could sit here and talk to you.
Oh,
I mean, I'm not an expert.
You're pretty close.
But I could have a conversation about the history of Beaver Falls when the first settlers came here, when after the Battle of Falling Timbers with General Broadhead opened up settlement north of the Ohio.
Wow.
So that's when people in 1794, and that's when people start settling here. So I could talk about that, but with sports, Namath had a lot to do with it.
Oh, put him on the map.
I mean, how lucky are we to have a beacon like Joe Namath for us to look at, us kids? You know, I was 12 years old in '69 when they won the Super Bowl.
Do you realize I'm rooting for Aaron Rodgers and the Jets? I like Aaron Rodgers. I think he's got a lot of swag.
Because of Namath.
Namath.
Yeah.
That's the reason.
Right.
I want him to win because of Namath.
I mean, he had a lot to do with it because we just seen, you know, his and studying his life and everything. And again, I never would say I'm an expert on anything, but I've probably read at least a dozen Namath books, and I know as much about his life than anybody, I think. Our families were friends. My grandparents and his parents were close friends. My mom went to the prom with his brother.
No kidding. No kidding.
And she even had a Namath story.
Aww.
My mom was telling Namath stories when Joe was 5 years old.
Listen.
So our lives, you know.
They intertwine. I love the guy. He's my childhood hero. And when I was at his brother's, Frank's funeral, gave our funeral home, Joe was there. It was just, I thought if I never do anything the rest of my life, I got a chance to meet Joe and spend time with him. He, and those motorcycles, you know, when he was in that movie with Anne Margaret, man, we all piled into the movie theater, couldn't believe it was Joe Namath and Anne Margaret. Every time I see Anne Margaret, I think of Joe Namath. I mean, Joe Namath, really, all these athletes today, it was Arnold Palmer, Western Pennsylvania's own, got the President's Cup starting, obviously. And Joe, they really started this whole endorsement.
They owe Joe a thank you.
Yeah, man.
As far as advertising, you know,
do you
stuff
realize
like
he had a television show in New York that was broadcasted locally?
Right.
And he would have people on like Mickey Mantle,
Muhammad Ali.
I mean, they would come to be on Joe's show.
Vince Lombardi. Yeah.
Noxzema commercials. The woman was Farrah Fawcett. I mean, it just goes on. And when he talks about this place, he said something to me years ago, we'll do it together. Guys like you and Mike Roma and Judge Mancini and so many people. And I'm nowhere near as connected as you guys, but it just does my heart so much good to have a chance to be able to promote what this is all about. Because Larry Bruno really was a guy that cared about people.
And he was so talented. So talented.
As a coach.
There wasn't a better quarterbacks coach that lived. Do you realize, real quick, in 20 years he coached Beaver Falls? Now, you have some quarterbacks that played 2 years, some played 3. He had 9 Division I quarterbacks.
How many?
9.
Can you name them?
Yeah.
Do it.
In 20 years.
Do it.
Okay.
Give me the names. I want these names.
Rich Nidabalda, Joe Namath, Butch Ryan, Lou Sincar, Bill Ross, Ron Shiro,
Ronnie.
Jimmy Wagner, Kevin Scanlon is 8. Mike Nardone went to Indiana. He's 9. And then Mark Cheeto went to Geneva. Jimmy DeChilli went to IUP. So that's 9. That's 10, 11 college quarterbacks out of 20 years. DeChilli started 3 years at Beaver Falls. So you figure 11, 12, 13. Scanlon started 2. 14, 15.
That's amazing.
So there's only been like 2 or 3 quarterbacks that didn't play college football in 20 years. Now, come on. 9 Division I.
All right.
I mean, Miami, Kentucky, Louisville, Indiana, Iowa, University of Cincinnati, Alabama.
That's incredible. You know, speaking of Cincinnati, you know, I think about all the time, and he worked in this community we call home for years. Danny Raines. Danny Raines went to Cincinnati, played in Hopewell, played for the Bears. I mean, so many.
Gives me a bad memory.
Why is that?
35-0, Danny Raines. 9-0, number 1 in the state, Beaver Falls. Danny Raines. Hopewell, all I see is Dorsett taking the opening kickoff in a rainstorm, ran it back to the 5. They handed it to Raines the first play. He goes over. 7-0, Hopewell, Beaver Falls. They beat us 35-0.
When it rains, it pours. Last thing, before you talk about the foundation, you know, documentaries. I love history, and I could listen to you all night. But, you know, we at Rhino Productions did a show for decades, and we were really the first to do what everybody's doing now. We got the Power of Bowser Friday Night Lights game, KDK Radio. They do a great job. Tomorrow, it's North Allegheny, Art Walker Jr., Ryan Lahmeyer, Central Catholic. Great matchup tomorrow night. But you realize we have all this footage. We have footage that no one has because we were really doing it before anyone. Our lifelong goal, and now that those guys are getting close to retirement, and I've been doing these videos for free for a decade plus because I just love promoting. If we could find someone to help us, one of our goals and dreams, Tad Makowicki and Ray Pruya, Mark Makuga, we want to do a documentary on the WPIL and football on Friday nights. I don't care where you go, maybe Texas, Florida, possibly down in the Bayou, California. Nobody has a history that we have. And you, just what you know alone, right here in Beaver County, think of the history of football.
We can contribute to that, definitely. Yeah, that would be something that I would like to see.
Listen, I want to get one of these for render. We would love to do something in New Brighton because we've got some players like a Terry Francona type of name you may remember. What you have done here in Beaver Falls, I come to Beaver Falls sometimes to Sheetz, McDonald's to get a coffee just to drive by the window. What you did for the football team that's struggling, classrooms could come here. This is such a history lesson. And other than Frank Dawson at the Lou Holtz Upper Ohio Valley Hall of Fame, we need more places like this.
Right. Well, they, by the way, were a big influence on us when we were starting out. We went and visited them, and he had some Coach Bruno stuff, and he graciously donated it, and he gave us a tour of his museum and everything, and he was a big help, Digger Dawson.
Larry Bruno, do you remember when you came back and didn't work at Alabama? Did you have a chance to sit with the coach? What was his words to you, or when you transferred? Or
well, I was very disappointed because I had let him down.
Oh,
you know, by losing my scholarship.
Right.
And I told him, I said, I'm going to keep trying. I enrolled at Pitt, and Jackie Sherrill accepted me on the team and all this stuff. But, you know, that's the greatness of this guy. He liked me no matter what. He goes, you know what? Just look forward. Don't look behind you no more. Look forward. That's what he told me. And he was telling me, you know what? I love you no matter what. And that, to me, when I came to work with this foundation, it truly changed my life.
Do you remember where you were when he died?
Yeah, I was home. It was Christmas Eve, 2010.
Devastated.
And I was a pallbearer for him. So that was one of the proudest days of my life.
He was always so good to me, too. All right, tell everybody about the foundation, how they can help out.
Well, we have a PayPal set up on our website if people want to make donations. We're always adding to this. We have scholarships. We're feeding football teams. So donations are, you know, everything goes to the community. We pay utilities here at the building. Other than that, everything goes to the community. Go on our website. It's www.themagicalcoach.org. And you could do the PayPal thing there, or contact any board member on the foundation. We're usually down here every day, even though we're not open yet.
When's that going to happen?
Well, we're getting the sign now. We're getting estimates on the sign. And as soon as we get
We're going to get a sign.
We're going to get a sign up. As soon as we get the sign up, we're going to open.
Man, I just can't thank you enough for letting me do this. And it really gave me an opportunity to kind of relax. I've been grinding a lot lately, and I don't know what it is about Beaver Falls.
Well,
I mean, I'm not connected to it anything other than here, and I worked here for a little bit. But this is a really special community.
Well, we really appreciate you here, Rob. I mean, when you have a place like this, you can't really just sit back and hope people find you. You have to go out and promote it, and you have to get your name out there. And you've been such a big help for us.
Larry Bruno, when I got into this business, he really was one of the early mentors and helped me and took time and just was always there. And then later when he was out doing his other job, he actually was, selling beer and out there every day as a salesman. I would run into him and he was so kind. And I honestly, even though I'm 67 years old, anytime somebody mentions Joe Namath, it makes me feel like I'm a young teenager in that magical year in which we put a man on the moon and Joe Namath won the Super Bowl. And he was from Beaver Falls. Do you realize how young he was to do what he did?
Wow.
Every WPIAL championship, national championship, and then he wins the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I remember the first time I ever seen him.
Where at?
I went down the ball field. This was like 1965, something like that. I was a little kid.
What was he doing here?
I went down Moultrips to meet my friends, and he walked right past me. He was walking a dog on a leash. Must have been his mom's dog because his mom lived up the block. And my friends come running up to me and goes, "Do you know who that was?" And I said, "No." They said, "That's Joe Namath." I'm like, "Who's Joe Namath?"
Oh my goodness.
They said, "He's a professional quarterback. He's from Beaver Falls." And I went, "Oh, really?" And I watched him walk away. And Billy Walker, my friend, said, "He threw me a pass."
Holy
I said, "Did you
mackerel.
catch it?" He goes, "Yeah, I caught it." So that's the first time I ever seen him. That must have been like, right when he got out of college.
You know what I can't believe? Because, I know I'm getting old, but it's kind of hard to believe Joe is the age that he is now.
81.
I know, but he looks better than I do. He looks great.
Yeah.
Best advice Larry Bruno ever gave you, was it basically look forward? What was it? And we're going to say goodnight.
Well, as far as the team thing goes, teams is family. One time I took an extra Gatorade to practice. The last guy in line didn't get one.
So what happened?
We finished practice. No one said a word to me. We're leaving the field. Coach Bruno taps me on the shoulder. He goes, "Question for you." "Yeah, Coach." "You're going to be married. You're going to be a man someday. You're going to be married. You're going to be having dinner with your family." I'm thinking, where's this going? "Yeah, Coach, I probably will." He goes, "I got a question for you. If there's one piece of bread left on that table, are you going to take it or are you going to let your family have it?" I said, "Well, Coach, I'm going to let my family have it." He goes, "This football team is your family. Don't ever pull that again."
In the words of Frank Dawson from earlier today, and he did say this, the legend of Larry Bruno will live on forever. Don't forget those Coons Quality Food Sports Reports, his alma mater, Bama, Georgia this weekend. Pitt is off, North Carolina. How about the Panthers? Don't you love it?
Gotta love them.
I'm telling you.
It's one of those teams,
I'm loving it. Would you think you'd have been cashing in on that name, image, and likeness when you were a kid? You ever think about some of the cash these players are making?
I know.
Millions.
I know. I'm jealous.
I do like watching that Arch Manning play. I was hoping that maybe he'd get frustrated and come to Pitt, but we've got that kid from Alabama now, Holstein.
Yeah, he's working out. Let's hope he doesn't get hurt.
I swear this was set up prior to me even knowing about it because they really made my night. I'm so happy to be here, and I can't wait to talk to Judge Mancini, who was a good coach in his own right, too.
Oh, very good player. He still has...
I don't know anything about him as a player.
Still has a school record at Beaver Falls, 8 interceptions in one season.
What year did he graduate?
72.
Okay.
Went to Louisville on a scholarship, him and Jimmy Wagner. Played for Coach Lee Corso. And what happened was, that year, Lee Corso, one block from where you're sitting, spoke at our banquet at the Broadway Hotel.
Corso.
My sophomore year, because he had Mancini and Wagner on his team.
Yeah.
He came and spoke at our banquet that year.
At Broadhead Hotel.
At the Broadhead Hotel. Lee Corso.
Now, rumor has it, they used to actually, Coach Bruno would have his team spend the night there the night before a game. Is that fact or fiction?
Fiction. We never did that. Yeah.
Did you wear blazers?
We wore blazers. We went to church every morning. We wore blazers.
Every morning?
Well, the morning of the game.
St. Mary's.
Friday morning. Well, we had a coach at each church for each denomination. If you were Methodist or Protestant.
Wow.
He had a coach at every church. He made sure all the kids went to church the day of the game.
You realize why Corso was here. One of the greatest promoters of college sports, game day, a legend, absolutely love him. But think about it. They knew, just like Jimmy Johnson, there were players from Beaver Falls and Beaver County back in the day. How about Mercury Morris just died?
Oh, did he?
From Avonworth.
Oh.
Do you realize that him and Poe James were in the top 3, along with OJ at one time, in college football? Avonworth and New Brighton, like 30 minutes apart.
Right. Right. Well, Poe set the freshman rushing record in New Mexico State, and guess who broke it?
Who?
Dorsett. So from 19, when did Poe go? 69, he was a freshman?
Yeah.
69 to when Dorsett a freshman.
Stevie.
So those 5 years, it was all Beaver County running backs on the record.
Stevie.
I'm serious.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know who broke Poe's single point season record in Beaver County?
Was it Law?
Yep, his relation, that great Essex Law.
Essex, yeah.
But listen, Dorsett was, listen, I remember the 8mm film. I remember, Dr. Zernich, when I worked at Ciro's Top of the Mall, the Golden Panthers. I met Tony when he was probably a senior. I couldn't believe how small he was, and obviously physically fit, pumped up as he got into the pros, won that Super Bowl as a rookie. How good of a high school football player was Tony Dorsett?
I loved it. When schools would send me questionnaires when they're starting to get recruited,
right?
They'll send you these questionnaires, these colleges.
Right.
You fill them out and send them in.
Right.
They'd have the question on there, who's the best player you ever played against?
Dorsett.
Oh, my God, I couldn't wait. In big letters, I'd write Tony Dorsett.
Oh.
I mean, I was just so proud just to have played against him.
Help out the Larry Bruno Foundation. And as Joe Namath told me, we can all do this together to keep the legend of Larry Bruno alive forever and continue to pay dividends for future student athletes, because it's a magical time and he was the magical coach. Steve Higgins and your Pratt Pack. More to come tonight from the Larry Bruno Foundation in Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania.